Okay, so today we'll talk about an important British architect who died in 2001, Sir Denis Lasdun, and we'll review some of his most important works. Let's read a little bit about him. So Sir Denis Louis Lasdun was born in September 1914, but died on the 11th of January 2001. So 21 years ago, exactly on this day, January 11th, was an eminent English architect, the son of Nathan Lasdun and Julie, anyway. Probably his best known work is the Royal National Theatre on London's South Bank of the Thames, which is a Grade II listed building and one of the most notable examples of brutalist design in the United Kingdom. Now, Brutalism came back to fashion in a way a few years ago. I saw in Vienna, there was an exhibition, SOS Brutalismus. There was a big book published about it. And I think brutalist architecture, or what is called brutalist architecture, became somehow of interest to us because after a while, perhaps we became tired of the, minimalist pretentiousness and pedantic aesthetic that it promoted. Also, maybe in reaction to a certain, white fragilization that came via certain Japanese stars like Kazuyo Sejima, to an extent, maybe even Toyo Ito, even more so Ishigami, and so on. Brutalism is you can count on it in terms of, abrupt presence, so to speak, and then solidity, and it has some virtues. But some people consider it indeed as being brutal, although in my opinion, behind the brutalist appearance, sometimes hides a sensitive creator or author. So let's see what Denis Lasdun was and is about. Lasdun studied, of course, at the Architectural Association in London, this school which never tired of producing remarkable architects, and was a junior in the practice of Wells codes. Like other modernist architects, including Sir Basil Spence and Peter and Alison Smithson, Lasdun was much influenced by Le Corbusier and Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, but there was a gentler, more classical influence too from the likes of Nicholas Haussmoor. Lasdun was elected Royal Academician on the 29th of May, 1991. So let's move forward. Here was the man. Indeed, an interesting man, and with some skepticism, a little bit surprising, I would say, from a genuine Sir. You see his expression on his face, rather inquisitive, looking at this gentleman, you wouldn't expect him to be a brutalist. But I don't think his work is truly so brutal at all. Or look here, how could this man be a brutalist? Look at his face. I don't think it's possible. Anyway, nor here. It looks almost like a, a meditative, melancholy man, almost an existentialist. The Hallfield Primary School in Paddington from 1952. Well, I hope I have better pictures, but even from this picture, we can see clearly skill, and clear-cut skill, so to speak. It's easy to comprehend the building somehow looking from here. And you see that this architect had a clear vision, so to speak. He was, but he also indulged in, modifying the trajectory of the walls, in a fluid way when necessary. It's 1952, but when you think that it's just 7 years after the deadly Second World War, indeed, it is a modernity here, which is obvious, and it's certainly not brutal. I mean, this canopy, okay, maybe it's a little bit dramatic, but I wouldn't call it brutal or brutalist. The Keeling House, Grade 2 listed, the first example of post-war council housing to gain this distinction. So the Keeling House, Keeling not K-I-L-L-I-N-G, but K-E-E-L-I-N-G. A block of flats. Look at the cars, the vehicles on the road, on the street, and the building. It's like the cars were made with at least 30, 40, 50 years earlier than the building. The building could have been made today, but not the cars. So this is like in the drawings of and the renderings of Le Corbusier, or sketches. He envisioned an architecture which could have been built, in the present, but he didn't modify the design of the cars. The cars on his highways, triumphant or not, on the roads, are the cars of his time, while the architecture could have been the architecture of our time. So, but we see the same here in this photograph. The building by Denis Lasdun could have been built this year. Well, if there was no pandemic, maybe even with the pandemic. But the cars are obviously from the 50s, if not 40s. Yeah. Now this is a more recent picture. The building is still, atemporal almost in its, luminous modernity. No, truly, if this building was built in 2020 or 2021 or 2022, it would have looked quite okay in that year or this year. Interesting also certain things here, that more conventional architects wouldn't do. If you look at this, the proximity of and the angle between these two, prisms, one more inclined towards criticism would comment on, but you can't. Are these balconies? Maybe they are rather narrow, they seem, or maybe as narrow as this. Anyway, from this balcony, you can look into this apartment. And from this apartment, you could also look into this apartment. But, this is frequent in, many cities of the world. I remember in Venice, I spent a few nights in someone's apartment who invited me there. And, when I opened the oblongs, I saw the across the street was just 2 or 3 meters away from where I was. Such situations are not truly uncommon at all. Anyway, no, I'm mentioning this because some people make a big case of this, that life has all kinds of, difficult moments or difficult circumstances. So why not add another one? No, I'm not trying to be cynical. I'm just trying to understand, Denis Lasdun. Let's hope we have the plan here too. But it's an architecture with vigor. It has vigor, and architecture needs vigor. Unless it wants to advocate lack of vigor, which is an alternative too. But I still think sculpturalness is important for architecture because of the sculpturalness you have, you know, the dialectics between shadow and light, which are important for architecture. And Le Corbusier was one of the most famous ones to derive even a definition of architecture from that. It's a good building. It's a good building and surprisingly fresh, I would say. Dennis Lasdun, Sir Dennis Lasdun. And now we can look at the plan. So what I see here is the access to the apartments through from an exterior corridor, which I always advocated and admired. Something that is not done in Romania, and I don't understand why. Because it's so easy to create comfortable apartments with double ventilation, cross ventilation, and to access. It's extremely easy. It's not done in our country, and the reason I was told is because of our climate. What climate? Great Britain doesn't have a more tough climate than Romania, that's for sure. And you can see this kind of arrangement in Scandinavian countries everywhere. So how come we think that this is not possible here? It's simply not so. But we prefer to expel the staircase somewhere inside the block of flats, often without enough ventilation or natural light, in a stiff space where neighbors do not like to meet and exchange ideas or smoke a cigarette and so on. While here is so very possible. You have the private balcony, but you also have the collective, the corridor from which you access the apartments, which belongs to everybody. Truly, this way of conceiving blocks of flats creates a lot of possibilities. Truly, you can, model very interesting, configurations. The building has levels of sophistication, even what we look at here. I don't know if this was not modified. Maybe it was not. Interesting to have an opaque door incorporated into a vast glass surface. Rather unusual. Dennis Lasdun, Sir Dennis Lasdun. You see this oblique dialogue between two apartments. Certain people might protest against, but I think, and I don't think it's a perversion, I think it's an allusion to certain fruitful discomforts that life has. And maybe these fruitful discomforts should be, looked upon with seriousness. I'm even thinking to make a presentation about architecture and fruitful discomforts, because not all discomforts are without some, at least prospective, positive outcome. The apartments are just fine, luminous. What can we say? It's clear here was a knowledgeable architect who created this block of flats, careful to every detail, and certainly not brutalist. This is not a brutalist build, no. Now, a house from 1957, Sulkin House, Bethnal Green, East London. Well, a house. this I noticed, and it imbalanced me linguistically, because also I showed the other day that so-called house in Japan by Kazuyo Sejima, by Sana, which appeared to be more than just one house, just like here. So I guess it's the generic name for even for a block of flats, for an apartment building, house. Here again, we are dealing with the same, access into apartments from an exterior corridor. Nice. I'm all for it. The more we will do this, the better. Look how well, it's how easy it is to create a functional and comfortable apartment because of this double orientation. I have the experience of such buildings in Sibiu. There are such buildings. In fact, I even grew up in one of them. It's okay. I know now people would protest that, wait a minute, if I want to arrive at this door, I have to walk up on this exterior corridor, and I pass by the window of the kitchen of this neighbor. So what? You might say hello to each other. What's so bad? And okay, if you are not in good terms with each other, you simply lower your head and you keep cooking. It's okay. It's fine. I think this kind of architecture for blocks of flats is much better than to have to enclose the vertical circulation into somewhere in the middle of the building. No, I mean at the interior of the building. Plus, this kind of sculpturalness you cannot arrive at easily if you do that. But like this, you can have practically a very large repertoire of possibilities. And you see, the building has distinction, as opposed to the buildings that we see here, and here. I mean, I only see a fragment. But this is architecture, and it's architecture exactly because of this intermediate part of the building. This which consists of circulations. The monumentality, the sculpturalness of the tower with the elevator, and then the connections, and it's so easy to comprehend the functioning of the building. I think it's very nice. Again, bravo to the Sir Dennis Lasdun. Nothing extravagant, but this is high quality architecture for a program where people don't innovate so much, actually. And can you imagine, this was done 70 years ago, almost 70 years ago. It doesn't look like it. Well, it's well kept, it's true, but you can tell this is quality architecture. Well, there is a reason why he was knighted, that became a sir, is because of the quality of his work. That's why. You see, a book published, there was a few years ago, maybe still is, massive, expressive sculptural, Brutalism, now and then. In Vienna, I saw a book published in German, Brutalismus now. Yeah, you see here the top, the church that I showed the other day by Fritz Wotruba in Vienna. The Beauty of Brutalism, Raw Concrete, another book published by, on this subject. Here we see this word, raw, which is actually reading from left to right, well, from right to left, the word war. Raw is something that Zaha Hadid herself wanted to arrive at. In an interview, she said, I want to create an architecture which is raw, earthy, and vital. Well, out of the three of this triad, in my opinion, she perhaps achieved sometimes a certain vitality, but certainly not rawness and not earthiness. Well, unless you consider some works, some maybe the earlier works in concrete with a certain level of rawness. But to have earthiness and rawness, this, in my opinion, Zaha Hadid didn't arrive at. Maybe if she lived longer, she would have. This brutal world, this is a structure erected where else but in China by Herzog and de Meuron. I always like this. It's also reddish. Well, the picture here is in black and white. This brutal world, in my opinion, is not brutal at all. To me, what is brutal is mediocrity. Something that is, honestly vigorous, even with an appearance of what we might call brutality, in my opinion, maybe I'm subjective, is not brutal. No, it's like saying, truth is brutal. Truth is truth, even when it is not gentle. I think we should appreciate it and be affectionate towards it, even if it's not sweet enough for certain sensibilities. Like I mentioned that work by Herzog and de Meuron, and I hope I show here some pictures with it. I didn't look at this presentation for a while. I like this work. Yeah, this is what it is in a former communist country. Look what they built and what they built. And look at the people, we complain in our country that we are not sophisticated enough, we don't have enough knowledge, we don't this and we don't that. Well, what about the builders here? You can tell them with very primitive tools, they are working on a work which belongs to what we might call the avant-garde, coming from the West. So there is no contradiction actually between the two. Now, of course, here there was, implicated Ai Weiwei and, but what is to be underlined is the fact that China, a former stringently intense communist country, now is a laboratory of almost anything goes. That is also bad from certain points of view, but it's also good from other points of view, that architects like Herzog and de Meuron find a way to explore certain architectures, and we look at one of these things here. Maybe just these two people built this thing. I don't know. I only see these two people now, but I like this picture. That here is a manifesto of some kind of turbulence, Western turbulence, landing in China, and just two people in curious, postures in the proximity of the building. No one else around. Very interesting. But I like this building. And if this building is Brutalismus, well, let's say welcome Brutalismus. Well, we see also architecture students, or I don't know, other kinds of people. We even see someone there risking his life. Of course, the pedantic one would claim, well, where is the railing? This person might fall. Well, yes, this person might fall in many places in life. Whose responsibility is it? Well, It's becoming popular, the building, as you can see, former communists, born under Mao, some of them. Now you look at this person here, it's clear that this is rather difficult. There are no steps here, it's not really a step. And yet, why? You could understand why the child is doing this, because he's a child. He doesn't have the inhibitions of the adult. But what is the adult doing it? Maybe the adult is doing it to save the child. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe the adult is also carried away by juvenile impulses and enjoying the adventure of walking uncomfortably on this sloping plane of concrete. It's possible. But you see, yesterday I tried, and I guess I didn't find the right words, and I wasn't very inspired, and I apologize, but I kind of alluded to this. You build a structure without a function. You just build it. And in a way, the crazier, the better. You just build it and then let people discover it, use it, employ it, enjoy it. This is what we look at here. These people, just like the pioneers who enter a forest which was never explored before, and they like to go exactly to those more uncomfortable places, here the same thing. People are curious, they enter this thing, they don't know what to expect, but they love to discover. Why is it that this conception about architecture is not employed more often? I think it would be to the benefit of anyone. Because it stirs up your curiosity, because you don't know what it is. You don't know what its function is. It's not a prescriptive building. It's an explorative building. It's a building, an enigma in a way. And you enter the enigma and you, in a way, you generate meaning through your presence inside of this building. Yeah. So I can only agree with Fujimoto when he said he formulated the space of his creations into that, ambiguous, conflictual, mysterious space between function and no function. The so-called no function could receive a function in the process of being inhabited or used. And these are, this is a diagrammatic drawing of that structure. And here is the building by, not by Sir Denis Lasdun, by Sir, well, he's not a Sir, Herzog, Herzog and de Meuron, the famous Swiss architects. By the way of Brutalism. No, it's a very nice Brutalism, if you ask me. The more of it, the better, in my opinion. Okay, you see SOS Brutalism, but a global service. This is the English, publication. The German one is, barely seen on the left. And yes, it was called SOS Brutalismus. You know what SOS means? It means danger. That's what it means. But I think Friedrich Nietzsche would have loved it, because he said very clearly, live dangerously. That's something we don't do. I don't do it either. That's the truth. I'm a coward. I'm a bourgeois, locked up in a room. I'm even afraid to get out, afraid of the virus, the almost dead virus. Now, let's go back to Denis Lasdun, the Fitzwilliam College from Cambridge, in Cambridge, 1959-1963. So approximately 60 years ago, it was built this. Sorry about the resolution of these pictures. a lot of glass. But otherwise, the buildings seem to have that very clear conception that we saw, in the previous buildings that we looked at by him. Oxford, an old university which is not afraid to assume also levels of modernity, and it continues to do so. And you see in this case also the importance of the exterior spaces, corridors, all kinds of passages, and just like in his apartment buildings. This establishes a dialogue with the exterior, which is important. It doesn't matter, it rains or it doesn't rain. The Royal College of Physicians in London, 1960, 1964. Now, of course, when you have an old statue like here, in the proximity of a new building, expressing modernity, I think the dialectics between the two are always enticing. And then if you have also a magnificent tree like here as well, all for the better. So we have art, we have nature, we have architecture together, and some old, furnishings for the environment. The the poles for the lighting system of the streets, which have some character because they belong to to a different time, but they are kept well. So right in this picture, we see several layers of physical reality. I think this is nice when you can see several of them simultaneously. So the College of Physicians, Sir Dennis Lasdun, not employing not only horizontal windows, but also vertical, narrow windows, as you can see. It's good to break any dogma. So the dogma of the horizontal window should be at least sometimes severely questioned. The interior is just like the exterior. And here again, we see what England is good at, to bring in tradition as well, at least through these paintings. Maybe the founders of the college or professors here in I don't know what century, but it looks good, and an old painting on the wall of a definitely modern interior. Dennis Lasdun, Sir Dennis Lasdun. Now, the core buildings of the University of East Anglia, Norwich, 1962, 1968, kind of similar with what we saw earlier. In fact, so similar that I'm a little bit confused. Even when I prepared the presentation, I was confused. I didn't know was that campus in Oxford, or is this one is in Norwich? They look very similar, if not identical. Maybe he liked the scheme so much that he felt compelled to repeat it. Except that here the concrete is not so well kept, at least in this picture. What bothers me is when we have so many windows, so much glass, and the windows don't open. To me, is to say the least, a little unsatisfying. Otherwise, these exterior passageways and corridors create that democracy of movement and the possible dialogue, which I think is important to life. And it's important to education too, because this is an educational setting, and students are supposed to communicate, to dialogue, to exchange ideas, and so on. And these exterior spaces are conducive to this. I don't know about those manicured trees, they are not really in the tradition of the romantic British landscaping. I understand these are planted on, in those cubicles, but they are a little bit burlesque, in my opinion. Maybe it's not him who was responsible for this or is responsible for it. But the articulation, the sculptural articulation of the volumes and so on is, done convincingly and clearly. Again, look at the cars and look at the buildings. This is an old picture, so it's from, I don't know, 60 years ago or so. The cars changed too, but the buildings, if you be like this today, it would be just fine. So the Charles Wilson building at the University of Leicester, what is, I don't know what, University of Leicester. There were some remarkable buildings built in Great Britain. James Stirling also built significantly. But this is also a good building, I would say, in this modernistic approach to architecture. It's almost, when you look at these works by Sir Denis Lasdun, you almost feel tempted, like saying, it's not so difficult to do good architecture, because somehow his buildings emanate this feeling that, with a clear conception, a little bit of courage and a little bit of skill, you can do a good building. It's almost luminous in its clarity. you don't feel here, a lot of, struggles and ambivalencies and doubts. And no, it's a clear conception, and it was approved and it was built. And the students enjoy being outside of the building on the beautiful grass on a sunny day. I have to come back to this fact that this gentleman studied at the Architectural Association. I suggest to everyone, including to myself, to look again, or look for the first time, but look at the page on the web of the Architectural Association. At the very bottom, you'll see the list with the alumni, the people who studied there and graduated from Architectural Association. It's an unbelievable, it is a most unbelievable list. I would say even now, at least 80% out of 100, of course, that moved the world of architecture went through that school. And the question is why? What was so magical about the Architectural Association? And perhaps it still is. It's non-conformism. It's serious non-conformism. From what I know, at the time when Rem Koolhaas and Zaha Hadid were studying there, there wasn't even a curriculum. It was, it was almost an ad hoc school, a spontaneous school. And its results were and are remarkable. They had 3 Pritzker prizes with graduates from Architectural Association, 2 or 3 Sterling prizes, which are the biggest prizes in architecture in Great Britain, and other kinds of prizes. Everybody went through Architectural Association, even Stephen Hall for a while, even Herbert Michon, the former critic of the New York Times. It was a magical place, and it still is a magical place. And why is it that the other schools of architecture don't learn from the Architectural Association? Most of them. The Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, Institute of Education, and the Library of the School of Oriental and African Studies in Bloomsbury. Here it is, a building which doesn't express, significant modesty, but it does have a level of vigor that is to be noticed. It's an institutional building, yes. It's obvious. It does have power, physical power. I like these things at the top. I don't know what's going on there, but they make the show, so to speak. Otherwise, this thing is, we had seen such things. It's not the first time we saw this kind of architecture. But it's interesting what's there at the top. The solid above the void, if by transparency we mean the void. So we have 3 registers: concrete, glass, concrete. Maybe a little bit too clear, but I guess it works. Although it is a little bit intimidating, but maybe that is not necessarily bad for such a fragile field like education. Although maybe it's not so fragile any longer since it became an industry itself, like everything else. Music is an industry, film is an industry, education is an industry. Sir Dennis Lasdun, Bloomsbury. Now we arrive at probably his best known work, the Royal National Theatre in London on the South Bank, 1967-1976. Here it is. Now, when he built this building, these yellow parts were not yellow, nor these, illustrations here or here. I guess at least at some point, some people wanted to bring in some so-called joy. I don't think it needs. I think it's a good building. It could have been left at peace, without, stickers on it. Like this, particularly this corner is quite interesting. I hope I have a detailed picture of it. It's rather dramatic. This is a favorite view from this corner, the National Theatre in London. Even this work, in my opinion, it's not really brutalist. Yes, it has concrete, but strangely, maybe very few people call Tadawando's brutalist, but I don't think Tadawando's concrete is, less, vigorous, let's put it this way, than this one, and thus less brutal. No, even this building, I wouldn't really call it brutalist. Maybe it has some touches of maybe excessive, confidence in concrete, but we have seen buildings even more, abrupt in this kind of aesthetics. I like this corner here. It's almost religious somehow. And unfortunately, the photographer, in my opinion, could have done a better job. Or maybe it's because I like symmetry sometimes, and here is, disturbed symmetry. But you get a feeling that it is rather impressive, this corner of the building. And it's not the only part. It's a large building, of course. We are talking about the National Theatre of London, in London. So it's, look at it, it's a very large building. Unafraid to leave the concrete exposed also in the interior. Yes, there are comfortable sittings, There is carpet, but the the concrete is itself without any kind of veil or masking, and that's good, I think. Although the bourgeois might protest, but the bourgeois had the experiences even more, provocative from other architects and artists. So I'm sure the bourgeois can handle it. This the red one is a new building. It was built a few years ago, and I will end this presentation on Sir Denis Lasdun with it. It was not built by I almost said Sir Bernard Tschumi, by Bernard Tschumi, who also went through Architectural Association himself, who also wrote a book, Red is Not a Color, and who loves redness. I love redness too. It's the color of passion, the color of love, and the color of the left, ideologically speaking. Is the color of revolution. What exactly symbolizes here, I don't know. But this is still the building by Denis Lasdun, Sir Denis Lasdun. And the name of the architect who did this, the red shed that we looked at, and we are going to see a few more other pictures, is this one, Howard Tompkins. The shed in London, you see it in the proximity of the building by Sir Denis Lasdun. Even a more modest building, if it has the courage of certain chromatic choices, a certain resoluteness in terms of appearance and constitution, is fine. I think it's a good addition and a good contrast to the building by Denis Lasdun. Here in the distance is the Cathedral St. Paul by Sir Christopher Wren, another Sir who was not an architect, but who built a lot, and by some is considered the most important British architect ever, although there is competition now from other Sirs who would like to debate that choice, but Sir Christopher Wren, who never studied architecture, but who did build a lot, built the largest cathedral in London, St. Paul Cathedral. And across the street, Jean Nouvel built a super mall, a big building, a mall, which does pay homage to St. Paul's Cathedral in its own interesting and specific way. So there is a dialogue here between buildings. There is a certain explicit or less explicit contextualism. And Jean Nouvel was and is his French, sometimes subtle way, contextualist. But context can be honored also through contrast, like harmony through contrast. It's possible, like we have here. Okay, so that was it for today.